insulated metal, blah, 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 blah. If I looked at the search term like women's pink rubber coated insulated water bottle, like that's my exact product. Now, the more specific you get to the product, the more specific the search is, the lower your search volume is going to be. So what we always look to do on product launches is like we try and find the intersection between good search volume, and good to us is like maybe even a couple thousand, depending on the budget, that also have really good relevancy to the product. Because what you're trying to do is you want to get in front of your exact shoppers. So example would be insulated water bottle is going to be really expensive and not super specific to my product. Like it's kind of specific, but not really specific. I'm trying to say like, okay, where can I start getting super specific to my product, but it's going to have enough search volume that I can get the sales volume that I need. So I would focus more on that versus that I would looking at only search volume. A bit of a technical answer here is we don't quote move them, meaning we're not going to pause the existing keywords. We're simply going to launch them in another match type. Again, make sure to keep the bids lower. Amazon actually, if you read their recommendations, they recommend keeping bids lower on broad and phrase match, even lower than the exact match. When we would launch those is honestly really dependent on performance of the account and availability of the budget. So if you launch a keyword in exact phrase and broad, so you have 50 keywords, right? And you launch them in exact phrase and broad, you technically have, 150 keywords that you've launched. And the potential of broad and phrase to spend could be quite high. So again, you just want to make sure it makes sense. It seems super simplistic, but if you are in a phase where you're struggling to control total ACoS and ACoS, to fix those two numbers, it really means that you have to lower down your ad spend with ideally little to no impact of the total sales or the ad sales in the case of ACoS. If you introduce a whole, again, those 50 keywords in exact phrase and broad, and those you probably need to test and optimize the bids, etc., you're introducing a lot of additional ad spend into the account. So you do want to be aware of that and be careful with that. So that's kind of a benchmark that we use. But overall, I would say, I don't know if I would have like a certain time frame or a frame which I would hold back on. It really is dependent on the performance of the account. Another good question, which best bid strategy for phrase and exacts when you move? So again, we don't really move them. We would simply launch them in addition. We like to separate them by campaign as well. Kind of gives us a little bit more control over, say, budgets for things. Now, as far as the bidding strategy, we're a super huge fan of using mainly dynamic down only. If it is a keyword that we want to ensure that we get impressions for, so for our launch keywords, for our main keywords, for anything we're trying to be aggressive with, we prefer a fixed bidding strategy. It's still going to be the same. It's still going to be pick highly relevant keywords. One other tip is pick keywords that fit within the budget of the account that you're launching. So for instance, if I have a couple $100 a day budget versus $50 a day budget, those launches are actually going to look a little bit different because I can't afford that many clicks on a $50 a day budget. Or if I had, a couple $100 or $1,000, I have a lot more room for clicks. So actually, you want budgets to play into your launch strategy. The other thing that you want to keep in mind, do not expect profitability on launch. This is a huge one. There's a lot of people that try and pull back and knee-jerk for profitability right out of the gate. That is not going to happen. The reason why it's not going to happen, and I'll tell you the numbers behind the numbers, is that ACoS is just going to be high on your product launches, and that is a function of two things. One, the aggressive cost per click you have to set to be able to get visibility in the beginning, and two, how low your product conversion rate is going to be, especially if you're launching without reviews. Those two things, once you start to be able to bring your cost per clicks down because you gain momentum or you're optimizing your bids, and then two, once your product conversion rate starts to increase because you're getting those reviews, maybe you're optimizing your listing a little bit more because you've learned more about your target market, that is going to help bring down your target ACoS. So those things, again, conversion rates are going to be low, high cost per click. That's actually like the nuts and bolts of why your ads are not profitable, and it's almost unreasonable to expect profitability in the beginning. And that's actually why, if you've ever had a product where you're like, no matter what I do, I cannot seem to bring the ACoS down, struggling here, it's a function of that your conversion rate is remaining low and it's not improving, and your cost per clicks are remaining high and you're not able to improve them due to the market or something else. So again, I would still say pick highly relevant keywords, Also, make sure that whatever keywords that you have fits within your budget. Launch them. Aggressive, sponsored product, exact match, potentially sponsored brand video, exact match if you have the creative. Double down on that for a couple weeks and then start expanding. Hello, and welcome back to another weekly Ask Junglr live. So if this is your first time joining, hey, welcome. And if you are a returning watcher, viewer, we appreciate you. As always, you can find the replays to these on basically any of our streaming platforms, which is pretty awesome. And so looks like we already have some comments rolling into the chat. Joseph, an OG listener, we appreciate you. And so the format for this, just a quick recap, is you can use the comment section wherever you are listening in from whatever platform. It's all going to be centralized here, and I will pull it up. We will get the best answer to your question. Again, we specify focusing on Amazon ads. Why? Because, hey, if you don't know who I am, my name is Elizabeth Greene. I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon advertising agency. So we focus on running your Amazon ads so you can run your business. We focus on more founder-led brands, which means you guys have to grow off of your own cash flow and bottom line. You don't have $20,000 to throw out your budget and just see what happens. There are larger brands who do that. That's not where you guys are, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you definitely need to know how to run your advertising to meet your brand goals. And so that's really what we specialize in, is understanding brand goals and translating that into ad strategy. Part of that is with our Amazon ad audits. I'm actually going to get ready after this to present one of my audits to a brand. Found a lot of stuff. You would be, oh my gosh, aghast, so surprised at what I find when I do those audits. A lot of times the brands will come in and be like, I feel like I'm missing something. I don't really know what it is. We find it, we'll let you know, and more importantly, we'll tell you how to fix it. So if that's something that would be helpful for you, feel free to go to our website, Junglr, J-U-R, Junglr.com. You can book a call with me, help you figure out what it is you need from your ads, and then we'll show you what an ad strategy for that looks like. All right, cool. Gil is saying, hey, Elizabeth. Isif saying, thank you for the session. I appreciate it. So honestly, this would not be here without you guys. And so, Joseph, I'm going to get to your question in a second because it's a really good question around Christmas keywords. So we are full on in Q4, guys. Sales are rolling in, which is fantastic. Black Friday, Cyber Monday was great. One really interesting thing Amazon did this year is they really sort of did like a pre-Black Friday push. And they did that through like external advertising efforts. So a lot of times when you go to the site, Amazon will say like, hey, Black Friday's coming. They're basically like, hey, Black Friday deals are here, which means if you were running deals, Amazon kind of conditioned shoppers, myself included, to really do their holiday shopping early, which resulted in some really good sales week of Q4. And then Cyber Monday, goodness, that day was fantastic for brands. Of course, it really does depend on your type of products, and it also depends on like if you were running discounts or not. But the brands who at least had some sort of discounts or giftable products, they did fantastic. All right. We'll get right into the questions. So again, the format is ask a question in the chat. I'll pull it up. We'll get an answer. This is a two-part question from Joseph. Great question, Joseph. When bidding on seasonal keywords such as Christmas, should we go first with low bids and gradually increase as unit velocity increases? Or is the only way to get good clicks with high traffic is if you bid high early on? So I am going to tell you like the basics, and then I'm also going to tell you maybe what you should be thinking about right now, because I saw like I am a notorious shopper like this, right? I'll be like, I know I need to get Christmas gifts. I know I need to get Christmas gifts. And suddenly yesterday I was like, oh my gosh, what is it? 15 days until Christmas. I don't have that much longer to shop. I better get everything now. And so what you'll find is that like it's the same thing with your advertising, right? I would have set up these campaigns like ahead of time, but right now we have like that very limited window in which these types of keywords are really going to perform. So I will kind of maybe tack on that bit of context towards the bottom of like the back end of my answer. But overall, I would say the things that we found really good with Christmas keywords is Now you do want to be careful with this, but oftentimes broad or phrase match can work really well for these types of keywords. The reason why is because there's so many different variations to these types of searches that it's really nice to get sort of a lot of those long tail variations and snap that up. And you're going to miss out on that when you have exact match. Now, if we're talking like your regular keywords, that's not as much of an issue because you might want to be a little bit more focused and you're kind of going after it for ranking. These types of keywords, it's very difficult and or near impossible to rank sometimes. So the goal is not going to be ranking. Typically, it's to broaden your reach and get a little bit more profitable seasonal sales. So if that is the case, we don't typically recommend going after these crazy aggressive. And you can sort of oftentimes get like a lot more impressions if you're doing phrase. Now, do be careful of broad match. You absolutely want to make sure that you're checking in on negatives in these cases because there is a potential for you to, again, maybe overspend or get in a lot of irrelevant traffic. Broad match is notorious for driving really irrelevant traffic these days. And so I like, now, again, given the context that I've told you of like, we're not that far from Christmas right now. I would start with moderate bids might be a good way to do it. And then sort of work your way up from there would be my recommendations. All right. This is a great question. How do you effectively funnel your search terms from your search term report? Okay, this is a fantastic. I'm going to give you all of my knowledge on this subject. Okay. I will tell you search term reports are the best. Hear me very clearly. The best keyword research tool out there. Why? Because you're basing it off of your own data and what you are absolutely certain of in your account. Sometimes people think that there's a cop-out of like, oh, I'm not doing like go out and doing keyword research. No, if you know what converts very well for your product, double, triple down on that. Here's what I would do. You want to see if you can identify which products are being advertised in your campaigns. Now, depending on how clean your campaign structure is, meaning like how many products you have advertised in that ad group, will determine like how certain you can be of which search terms are converting for which products. Unfortunately, if you had like 20 different products that are on 20 different listings in that campaign and the ad group, well, then you're not really sure which of those products converted. But if you keep it super clean to like one ASIN, or at the very least ASIN's only on one specific listing, then you can be much more confident of, sort of that path to purchase through which product. So that I want to say. And then what you do is you would simply filter for what search terms do I not already have in my advertising in terms of a keyword. So what do I have as a search term that I don't already have as a keyword? So those are the two filters you want to apply. And then what you're going to be looking at is all of your new potential keywords for those products. Now, there's a couple other filters that you want to go through. One, does it actually have a sale or not, right? You probably don't want to go through and add something as a keyword if you haven't proven that it's going to convert for your product. Now, depending on how many, search terms you end up with that fit that criteria of actually has the conversion, not already as a keyword and only for a specific product, then you can either you can put more filters here, or you can maybe just test all of them. Okay, so what would be the criteria that I would look at testing all of the things, or what would be the additional filters? So the additional filters would be performance filters, meaning if something is only converted once, there's less certainty of it converting again, right? It could be a one-off, or not really sure, right? And so in those cases, I would probably filter for everything that has over one order associated with it. Now, again, depending on how few keywords you come up, or potential keywords, again, these are search terms, that you come up with that filter, then maybe you can get even more, you can have even more filter on, I'm sorry, I got distracted. My son is wandering around in a Spider-Man costume. It's hysterical. I digress. Anyways, so it depends on how many of those you have, because the other filter that you might put on it is it performing at my ACoS targets?
So what you want to do is, again, you want to kind of like filter out, and then you say, okay, how much potential do I have here? All right, then let's apply another filter, how much potential. So if you had like only like 2 keywords that were actually converting, and maybe they were kind of a little bit above your targeted costs, but you needed to like expand your keyword set, then I would still go with those ones over, say, like additional keyword research, because again, we have more certainty that they are going to convert for our products. And so that's kind of the criteria that I would look at. The other thing that I would look at is when it comes to the actual spend, this is something not a lot of people do. You should totally always pay attention to this when you are trying to expand what you're doing with a specific product. The question is, what is the actual ad spend on this product that I'm launching additional campaigns or keywords for? If I already have overspend on the product and you launch additional keywords, you are going to increase the spend, which is kind of counterintuitive to goals because you already have too much ad spend. See how you can get into messy situations? So the other thing that I would curate it is like, if I needed to expand sales, but I have a very limited amount of additional budget I can put toward the keyword, then fantastic. I'm going to be really, really stringent with my filter criteria and only get like the best of the best. And that might only be like 5, but I'm okay with that because they don't need to increase spend that much. So hopefully Gil, mate, or Gil or Gilbert, I'm not sure, you have a space. But if that was helpful, let me know. If it was not, and you have a follow-up question or a clarifying question, let me know. All right. ASAP has a question. We want to capture share of our competitors' sales. They're selling a lot, but we have an advantage with a better price point and a good value our product, even though we don't have reviews yet. What strategies would you suggest to achieve this through PPC? Okay, so we said PPC. All right, we got another 3-parter to this question. Considering our situation, what would be the best PPC strategy? We focus on sponsored display ads, sponsored product ads, or ASIN targeting to maximize our performance? All of the above. I would say all of the above. Okay, so again, it depends on how much ad spend you want to allocate to this. So I would say sponsored display ads, product targeting, fantastic. I would do that. I would say optimize for page views would be the bidding strategy that I would focus on, because you want to like maximize views here. The other thing that I would do is you definitely want to do product targeting as well. Bonus points is if you have, say, like multiple product listings. You know, like say you have a couple products in a category and they all have an advantage, then you can like use all of your products to target their products, and it's like fantastic. You can dominate their search page, which is wonderful. The other thing that you can do, you can try now with sponsor brands product targeting or video product targeting. What we found is that although it does target the product pages, it also will appear on searches. And unfortunately, you can't get rid of those search terms because Amazon does not allow negative keywords inside of product targeting campaigns. You can only do negative product targeting. It's a whole thing. It's honestly obnoxious. So in those cases, you probably won't get as much visibility on their search pages as you would really want. Like you can't really like super focus it in. That being said, if you want like an additional thing that you can do, you will get some visibility there. And then the other thing is you can look at, we're talking pay-per-click, so I won't go into DSP, but there's obviously ways that you could target traffic using DSP as well. So honestly, the way I like to do it is I like to hit it from all angles. Hit them from all angles. That's our favorite thing to do. If you want even an additional thing to do, if they have any sort of branded traffic, now your conversion on this is not going to be as great, but another way that you can hit them, again, if we're talking about hitting them from all angles, you can definitely use brand traffic targeting, which can be helpful as well. Well, what are your thoughts on broad match modified keyword targeting? Love it. Let me actually pull it up for you. So Amazon has been making a ton of changes to their match types and how they work. And I actually have like this page on Amazon like saved because honestly, this is the only place they do it. Like they just update their documentation and they don't really tell anyone that there's changes. So I would definitely like keep an eye on this. So the one thing is that broad match, if you look at sponsored brand ads, they actually inside the documentation will say you can add broad match modifiers that indicate, you know, shopper queries you want to add. So for anyone listening in who may not be completely sure, they may not have heard of a broad match modifier. I don't know if you can see here. Maybe see if I can zoom in. But it's basically all you have to do is put a plus sign in front of the individual word in your keyword that you want to make sure will appear in the search term. So in this case, plus kids shoes. So kids, this word must appear in the search. So you can show up for like running shoes for kid would be, you know, because kids is in here, right? But it also added like running and shoes. And so those cases, it wouldn't show up for like running shoes because it has to have kids in there. And so that's the way that broad match modifiers work, is you basically say like, hey, algorithm must show this root word. Now, if you read their documentation, unfortunately, what you will notice is that it says tip in sponsored brand campaigns. So according to their documentation, sponsored brands really are the only one that at least they publicly say or call out broad match modifiers. Now, because broad match in sponsored product ads has been changed to function the exact same way that sponsored brand broad match always worked, which is they call them, a query can contain keywords. Let me see. Keyword itself, they're talking about this. They call it, so the keyword itself may not be contained in the customer search query, meaning it can show for what it deems as related terms. So the example they get, the keyword sneakers may match customers searching for basketball shoes. You can see how maybe there would be a misalignment there, right? And so what a lot of people do is they will use broad match modifiers. So that's what we have historically always used. So either we haven't used broad match in our sponsored brand ads, or we use broad match modifiers is the way that we've always done it. Now, when it comes to sponsored product ads, what I have seen is that, yes, a lot of people use broad match modifiers. I would recommend using broad match modifiers, especially if Amazon ever changes their algorithm, then you already have it there. The problem is I've seen it be a hit or miss if broad match modifiers actually work inside of sponsored product ads. I've looked at a lot of search term reports and I'm like, oh, it's a broad match modifier, and yet it's still inside of a sponsored product ad, but yet it's still functioning and using these related words, and it's not behaving the way we know that a broad match modifier should behave. So your question is, should you use broad match modifiers? Yes, they're fantastic, but just know when it comes to sponsored product ads, I've seen them not always work, unfortunately. But it was a fantastic question. All right. Question, can search query performance be used for PPC optimizations? Yes, it can, but you need to know how to use it. I've gotten a ton of questions recently on search query performance reports. And so the thing that you need to recognize about search query performance is the fact that it does contain it will contain organic and sponsored ad placements as well. But there are some nuances as to how the sales are calculated. It's super interesting. I'm going to have to see if I can like talk and pull up documentation here as well. But essentially the way it works, there's a couple reasons why it would be different. I'm going to give you all of this backstory because I need you to understand that your advertising data and your search query performance data are never going to match up. And oftentimes, or pretty much all of the time, what we have found is that search query performance will very much underreport things like traffic, the search, not so much search it. Yeah, searches as well a little bit, but it definitely underperforms on the orders and also a little bit on what's calculated in terms of the conversion rates. Now, why is that? Couple reasons. One, search query performance only includes the placements that happen on the whatever is appearing in the shopper search grid. Actually, let me pull up Amazon itself, and I can pull up a page and I'll kind of like show you what I'm looking at. All right. Because I think this is really helpful to understand. So I'm going to belabor this point because we got time. All right. So if we go to Amazon.com and let's say this is like my favorite. Let's search baby blanket. If you pull up the keyword term baby blanket, I'll show you what will and what will not be included in the search grid or in search query performance. So these placements right here. So this is a sponsored brand ad. This is not going to be included in the search query performance. Now, see, this is a sponsored, but this is within the search grid. So Amazon is going to include this first sponsored, the second one, this one. All of these are going to be included in the search query. Now, if we scroll down here, you can see this trending now. This is what's called a widget. So this is not going to be included in this search query performance data. This is the sponsor brand. So you could see how somebody could type in a shopper search. So it would record like somebody searching it, but they might go and click on a headline ad. They might click on a widget. They might click on something else. And so that would not be recorded in the search query performance data because they're only including what's appearing in the grids. So a lot of shopping happens on, say, like product pages. All of that stuff is not included. The other thing that kind of qualifies this is the fact that search query performance data is only within a 24-hour window, which is super interesting. So all shopper performance must from start to finish, so from click to purchase, must happen within that 24-hour window. And I'm trying to pull it up right here. Which means, you know, sometimes somebody will go in and they will purchase an item and then they'll add it to their cart, right? And then maybe I do this all the time. I'll add it to cart and then totally forget about it and then be like, oh, I'm gonna go and like purchase the product a little bit later. Well, that purchase again has to happen the same day. And if it doesn't happen the same day, then it's not going to be included in the actual orders. I'm trying to see if I can find the order where it says impressions, clicks, add to carts, purchases. All right, here we go. Let me pull this up for you. Cool. So the search query performance, it says click, cards, add, purchases, all actions should happen within a 24-hour period. So again, this is straight from the documentation. If ever you're trying to figure out something, like read documentation, understand it. And so because of that, essentially the orders or a lot of other metrics are going to look underreported. It's not that they're underreported, it's that Amazon has chosen to calculate them differently. So back to your question. How do you use search query performance to optimize your PPC? The best way to use search query performance to optimize your PPC is going to be to understand where you perform, on which search queries do you outperform the market. And then those search queries are going to be your best bet in terms of going after things for ranking purposes. So the way in which you would do that is you want to go to the search query performance report. You want to look at a search term level, pull it up for a specific product, and then you want to look at your click-through rate. You want to calculate the click-through rate of the markets. You're going to have to calculate this. So I'd recommend downloading it and looking at it. And you can divide total clicks by total impressions. So that's going to give you the click-through rate of the average click-through rate through the market. And then what you can do is you can calculate your click-through rate, or I will give it to you. And then you can calculate the average conversion rate. So that's going to be clicks divided by average, I believe it's purchases, on purchases. And then you're going to want to go in and you need to go in and just see, okay, so where do I outperform the market in terms of click-through rate and conversion rate? If I outperform the market, then I can be pretty confident that that's a good place to put my ad dollars. Because again, advertising is really good at also growing market share. But the one thing you really have to you got to actually make orders, right? So if you outperform the market, then if you put your ad dollars on that one pain point, then you most likely, not always, should move up in ranking. The other thing that you do want to pay attention to, of course, is the search query volume. What we found is that obviously, if things have higher volume, they make more sense to go after. So again, where do I have a strategic advantage? Where is there good volume on the search query performance report? And then what you can do is you can go into your advertising. So a really great way to do this is going to be the targeting tab. You would take that search query, go to the targeting tab, plug it in and say, am I advertising this in my ads? Yes or no? And then you can also, if you want to be even more nitty gritty with it, you can download a search term impression share report, search for that individual search query and say, okay, when I show up, am I showing up on this at all? First off, do we actually have it in a keyword, ideally an exact match? Then am I showing up on any of my search terms? And when I do show up in the search terms, what is my impression share? Meaning how many impressions out of the total am I getting? And so if you're really low on your search term impression share, that means you're not aggressively targeting that. And again, so then you can make changes into your advertising to make sure you are being aggressive to, again, push up on ranking. So what we found is it is great for tracking your market and your market share. To see the fluctuations. Is the search volume growing? Is it shrinking? How much of it am I getting? Those things are very helpful. And then also you want to take it a little bit further to say, okay, I can identify potential rank keywords and then aggressively target them with my ads and then validate how aggressive I'm being with my search term impression share report. That was a long one, but search query performance is really interesting. So hopefully that was helpful. Excuse me. Here is a difficult situation. All right, so we're handling a new PPC account. The products have bad quality, but we came over this condition, but currently have some previous bad quality product in Amazon inventory. What do we do in this solution? All the rating is about 3.3. We fear if we aggressively PPC, we get negative reviews because of the bad quality products. What is the best strategy in this condition? Yeah, so what we've seen in the past, especially if you have low quality products, is that honestly, it sounds like what you're looking to do is product liquidations. We have found that really when it comes to moving products that you maybe don't want to sell anymore or just aren't really strong products, that advertising oftentimes is not really the best way to do it. Because again, the performance just isn't typically that great. Oftentimes you have to push really hard on ads. The one thing that I will say is in this case, you kind of throw out the whole ranking strategy. So I probably wouldn't go aggressive rank exact match and do any of that stuff. The reason why is because that's a long-term play for something that it sounds really like you just kind of need to go out of stock on this one. And so in those cases, what I would recommend is just where in my advertising strategy, I don't care if it's an auto campaign, I don't care if it's category targeting, I don't care if it's broad match, I don't care where it happens, where can I get low cost, high performing visibility on the products? I'm just kind of agnostic as to where I can get that. Oftentimes it's auto campaigns or something that, again, if you have a long-term product, only focusing on autos or something like that is not going to be the best strategy long term. That's going to come back to bite you, but we don't need a long-term aggressive strategy right now. We just need to get the product sold out. And so in those cases, that's what I do from an ads perspective. Now, if we're talking about overall best strategy, honestly, what we've found is that significantly discounting the products and just getting a little bit of visibility through a little bit of ad spend tends to be the one that works the best. All right, how do you negative target or deal with special characters in search terms? Oh, this drives me crazy. A very common one. So we work in some scientific equipment, some really oftentimes if you have a furniture product or something, there's specific dimensions to it, and people will search for things and then they won't convert well because your product doesn't have those exact dimensions. honestly, I really hope Amazon's algorithm improves significantly when it comes to like real product specificity. I don't think that's something, as much as they have gotten right, their algorithm doesn't really get that right, but we'll see what happens with Rufus and other ones. I digress. So the only really way that we've tried to do it, and it works sometimes, and it's a little bit like the broad match modifiers I was just talking about. Like, it kind of works sometimes and doesn't always work. So if you had like a common example would be like half an inch, right? So it's like 1/2 inch or something like that. But the problem is there's that special character and you can't put the slash in a negative. It's obnoxious. And so what we've tried is like you could do like 1 space 2. Sometimes that works. Or, just kind of put that root there. You do want to be careful though, because if there's anything with like overlap there in search terms. So I mean, do what you can with that, but really what we found, like the most fail-safe solution to that, which is not the most like nitty-gritty solution, is going to be controlling your performance at the bid level. As kind of what we can do. We've been looking at one of competitors who's ranking on the first page but not running ads. How can we determine where their traffic is coming from? This is a rough one. So what I found is that there's not really a good way to figure this out. The only thing that we've tried in the past would be like if you go to their website or you go to somewhere else and you try and like see if you get retargeted with ads and where those ads lead, or seeing if there's like a newsletter that you can get on and see if they like send out information through their newsletter. That's really, it's kind of just go search for their brand presence and see if they have any redirects and where they end up. It's not a really great solution. It's more manual, but that's really the only way you can kind of even try and figure it out. But it's not going to be, it's not like you can have a report or something, a tool that gets pulled the data, unfortunately. I target some keywords in exact campaign that I had good sales. Now the keyword has not had good sales. I even decreased the price. Any tips to give me? Okay. So what you want to do is figure out what was working, what causes it to work previously, and what is changed and what's not happening now. So what you want to do is go into your ad console, pinpoint the point of change. So that would be like, okay, last month on the 3rd. And then you want to say, okay, how many days from that point of change till now? Maybe it's 7 days or something. And then what is the period, the exact date ranges after? And what you're looking for is why is there not sales? Sales happen because of 2 things. It's either traffic. So in terms of ads, that would be like impressions, that's clicks. In terms of like your overall account, that would be business reports, that would be your sessions, page views. So like, is it because the traffic went down, or it's, hey, the traffic's not converting anymore? So that would be my conversion rate. So that would be unit session percentage inside of business reports. That would be like your overall. And then you can also look at, you'll have to calculate it yourself. So it's going to be orders divided by clicks, but like, what is the conversion rate? What would be the conversion rate, and how was it before? How was it after? So we want to figure out, is it a traffic issue? Is it a conversion rate issue? If it's a traffic issue, you want to figure out, okay, what used to be driving traffic that is no longer driving traffic? So that would be looking at your ads. Did impressions go down for certain things? Is there certain things that clicks went down on? Again, you're looking at like the nitty gritty, what actually happened. You can also go into the search term reports and look at those as well. Sometimes, I know you said it was exact match, but sometimes there's like plural versions of that. If it's a traffic issue, the other thing you can look at is like if impressions plummeted and your bids remain the same and everything remained the same. Well, sometimes it's that keyword used to be in Amazon suggested search and then it fell out of suggested search. That's something we've seen in the past. And like all of a sudden overnight, like impressions go from like thousands to 0. And you're like, what happened? It was because Amazon changed something, right? So that would be something to look at. And if it a difference in conversion rate, then you have to kind of figure out, okay, so why did it stop converting? Is it a market trend? Did all of my competitors lower their price? Did all of my competitors, fun fact, if you ever see all of a sudden, all at once, I mean, not around like tentpole days, but like regular, all of a sudden, like all of your competitors have a coupon or something, that's typically an indication that there's a downtrend in the market and everybody's like trying to figure out something to make up for it. So I would look at that. You can also look at the historic search trends for the keyword to know, like, maybe shoppers just aren't as interested anymore. Sometimes consumer behavior shifts, and that would be something to take a look at. Or you can also look at the placements. Did all of a sudden you used to be showing up top of search and now you're showing up on product pages, and product pages just don't convert as well for you. And so conversion rates can go, depending on where you're showing up on the search page. That can also be another indication. So I would look at it from all angles, but you want to figure out what data point changed, and then you're going to troubleshoot all of the things that go into making that data point. So hopefully that was helpful. If anyone has any follow-up questions, let me know. I'm going to take a drink of water before my voice goes out. Ecom eBay, you had another question about TikTok and super URLs. To be honest, I'm not really sure. I do know you need to be a little bit careful these days with super URLs. I would read up on terms of service, just make sure that it would be okay. All right, goodbye. Have another question. I have a keyword that I used to dominate and it eventually died. How can I recover this keyword without significantly affecting my profits? Oh, okay. How do you rank without affecting profits? The biggest one that I would do is just calculate. Here's how I would do it. I would calculate where you need to be, like where are you now in terms of total A costs, and what would you be okay with going up to? So an example of this would be, let's say I had a total A cost of 10. I'm just going to do some rough math. Okay. So let's say I have $1,000 of spend a month and I'm making $10,000 in total sales. That means I have about a 10% total A cost. Well, I'm okay with going up to a 12% total A cost. Well, that means that I would take 10,000 and I would multiply that by 0.2 because I have 2 additional points, like 10 to 12 is 2. And then that means I have an additional $200 to spend throughout the month. So I know even if this doesn't result in any additional sales, which it should, but even if it doesn't result in any additional sales, I know if I keep my ad budget to $200, then I can afford to push on this keyword, right? And at least I won't be unprofitable. And you might play with the math and be like, I don't know if I can do it with $200. Okay, so what would be $10,000 if I added an additional 5 points? So that would be 10,000 minus point or multiply by 0.05. Okay, this is an extra $500. Okay, maybe I can do it with an extra $500. All right. So now I know if I spend an extra $500 on my ads and I'm going to specifically focus on this one keyword, I'm going to go up to a 15% total A cost. And if everything else remains the same, even if I don't grow, which again, ideally you are going to, then I'll be fine. And then I would say, okay, so that's $500 for the month. So let me divide that by, I'm just going to do rough math, 30. So I got an extra like $16 a day to spend on this. Okay, $16 a day. That makes sense. What kind of cost per clicks do I need to have? So let's say our average conversion rate is like 10. So you just work your way down and say like, okay, what would the math need to be for me to be able to hit this sort of profitability targets? Now, when it comes to ranking on a keyword, really what's going to determine that is one, your conversion rate. So do you have a really good conversion rate on it? It's going to take you less clicks to convert an order. That won't be that bad. How competitive is it? Is it a 50-cent keyword? Is it a $3 keyword? That's going to make a difference, right? Because on some end, what the cost per clicks is just like what the market's willing to pay. And so you're not going to have much wiggle room on that if you're talking about it from a ranking standpoint. Now, the other thing that you can do is if you need to get aggressive on your bids because you need to get that impression share, but you can't really afford to like spend that much throughout the day, Because if you completely uncap budgets at $1 cost per click, that can add up really, really fast, right? And so in that case, you would want to cap your campaign budget is the way that I would do it. So you say, okay, I need to get 5 orders a day on this one particular keyword, and I know those 5 orders are it's going to take me about 10 clicks on average to get an order. That's 50 clicks. If I have 50 clicks and I have a 50-cent bid, that means that's $25. Okay, so I'm going to cap my ad budget at $25. And then that allows you to only spend $25 as long as those 5 orders are going towards ranking efforts and they're going to help push you up in the rank. It may take a little bit longer than if you completely uncapped it, but sometimes that can be a good middle ground between like just completely blowing a ton of spend on ranking. When again, maybe if you're like, oh, what if I only spend I can afford to spend 25 cents? Well, if the market isn't going to give you any impressions at 25 cents, then a 25-cent bid is not going to work. And there's only so much you can do with pushing top of search to really get impressions on things. That can be super hard. It doesn't always really work. So in those cases, I would focus on that. Anyways, great question though. Cool. Looks like we have a couple more minutes left. I'm going to see if we have any questions. Oh, here's a question that was asked by someone a little while ago. This is a question I get a lot on the best bidding strategy. What you want, what's the best bidding strategy? Which I actually put out a newsletter not that long ago on what's the best bidding strategy and what should you focus on. And the thing that we do typically is on launch, we would prefer a fixed bidding strategy. The reason why is because fixed will increase the amount of impressions. And in our opinion, in the beginning, our goal is to gain impressions. And then if we're more profit focused on our launch, then we will typically use dynamic bid down only. That being said, if we are using dynamic bids up and or down only, and then we are struggling to get impressions, oftentimes switching over to a fixed bidding strategy can be helpful to gain impressions. But that would be our proposed. I don't really like using dynamic up and down bidding on launch. I know that's Amazon's default. But what I've found is that over the years, it doesn't really perform that well. And so we would prefer to go with things that perform. Another question that I get often is it a right, how do you go about using top of search strategies on the launch phase? This kind of goes back into something that I teased in the answer to Gilbert, was that I would prefer to focus on really being competitive in the market with our bids versus trying to rely on top of search. So what we have found is that if you are trying to make up for a low bid with top of search, it can work. However, it oftentimes will not give you the amount of impressions you really need to be able to make the clicks and the orders to make a difference with the advertising. So what I've seen work best is to use it as sort of like a supplementary boost. We like to use placement percentages to what we call augment what we're already doing. I have found time and time again that it doesn't really work as well if you're really just trying to make up for the lack of competitiveness of your bid. Again, not that you can't get any impressions, but what we found is that it just doesn't give us the volume of impressions that we're really looking to make on those products. All right, let me pull this up. So when I'm creating a new ad and establishing as this my keyword, it shows impression rank. Do I want to choose one I'm ranked well on or poorly on? That is a great question. So I'm going to see if I can pull up off screen the impression rank and just kind of give you some insights as to what it actually means and what it's telling you. So which is really interesting. So the impression rank, let me see. impression share is the percent of impressions you're getting on this relative to all the impressions it's generating. Impression rank is where your impression share stands relative to other advertisers' share of impressions for the same term. So use this to understand your impression coverage and help you decide how much to bid. So from my understanding, and I could be wrong, but it's giving you an understanding of how competitive that bid would be in the ad auction. Meaning, like, if these metrics are sort of equivalent to the I don't know if you ever dive into it. It's fascinating. I would totally recommend go looking at it. The search term impression share report. So that's saying, okay, so with this particular impression, like how much of this, like the total possible impressions am I getting? So what is my impression share? What percentage of the impressions am I getting? What is my impression rank? So impression share is like how much am I getting? And impression rank is like compared to everybody else who's bidding. If my impression share is like only 10%, this is just going like complete out of the blue. I'm pulling this out of thin air. So I don't even know if that would be correct or possible. But like say my impression share is only 10%, I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm only getting 10% of the total impressions. That's not very much. But then if I saw impression rank 1, I would say, oh, so even though I'm only getting 10% compared to everybody else is getting less than 10%. So 10% is good. You can see how those two things kind of work together. So what this is telling you is, okay, when I'm going to bid on something, what would my impression share be? So at maybe this bid, how much can I expect to get impression shares? So it says use these to understand your impression coverage and help you decide how much to bid. So in a lot of these, it's saying like, hey, you should totally bid more. Now, what's really, really interesting is if you put in these data points, it actually gives you a forecast. So you can see, I don't know if in your ad console it shows up. It does on mine to the right. It says forecast beta. And what it does is it says, hey, an estimated number of times your ads will be clicked, or an estimated times, like, again, it's like kind of forecasting these things. So Amazon's giving us a lot of insights into market data and the forecast of stuff, which is like fascinating. But again, so impression share, impression rank are fantastic to again, kind of like gauge where you might fall. But what we've seen is that honestly, a lot of times the impression share and rank, like what really matters is orders. And so I would still use best practices when it comes to picking keywords. Like make sure that whatever keywords you're picking are the ones that are going to make sense for your product. But I love these like niche questions. These are awesome. All right. Oh, cool. As I was saying, thank you. And it's been valuable. So that I appreciate. I'm glad you guys are finding value in this. Speaking of bid placements, is it true that increasing your bid alone is just the same as increasing your bid placement? No. All right, let's dive into bid placements. Let's get nitty gritty here. I'm going to see if I can pull up some data points. Okay, so what is the difference between a placement and a bid? So a placement will change your bid, change how much you're spending, but it's going to only change it for that specific type of spot on the page, if that makes sense. So your bid is going to change everything. It's going to change how much you enter the ad auction for every single placement, for every single potential keyword and search terms that can trigger underneath that keyword, and it's going to change it for everything across the board. Placement says, hey, Amazon, I am willing to spend more for this specific thing. By the way, fascinating sidebar. we're super excited to get into it. We're like begging and knocking on with the Amazon reps to give us access. We will have access hopefully very shortly, and our developer is already on it. And we're going through like some learning and training. Amazon is actually bringing AMC, which is Amazon Marketing Cloud Insights. You can build audiences and allow you to do bid adjustments on specific audiences. So that means not only are you going to be able to leverage, of course, like, do I want to show up top of search? Do I want to show up rest of search? You can actually adjust how much you want to bid on individual, like, what do they call them? On individual search audiences. So if a shopper falls into the criteria of that search audience, you can actually change how much you're going to enter. You can like increase how much you want to pay for certain customers if you've identified their gosh, I'm so excited about that. We're going to like dig our hands into that soon. So basically it's like I'm going to increase how much I'm going to pay for this segment. I'm getting off my sidebar of AMC. One thing that we've found is that although the bid adjustments are factored in to like the ad auction, and to be honest, even if you go through and like read all the documentation and all of their research papers and things that Amazon has published on their advertising auction and how it works, I've been down the rabbit hole with that. It's fascinating. There's only so much we can glean from that. That being said, one of the things that we've just observed is that if you put, so back when placements first came out, there was a tactic that some people were employing, saying, okay, like put a 15-cent bid on something and then put like a 900% top of search, and like you'll only show up top of search. What we found is that those kind of used to work back in the day, but what we've seen recently is that if you kind of try and enter into the ad auction with a bid that's way, way, way too low, you just don't trigger your product and your campaign to be entered in as many ad auctions as you do if you have a more competitive bid, and then simply use that boost of the placement adjustment to sort of try and shift traffic to that specific search type, if that makes sense. So again, a long-winded way to say it, but I love talking about these things, and it's a great question. So hopefully that answered your question. I have a couple minutes if you want to ask a follow-up on that. Cool. Someone is saying it is good to target a wide range of keywords. Better is choose generic keywords. Saying Nicholas, is that earlier? I would say it depends on the product. I would be really careful with targeting generic keywords, actually. So anyways, I would really what we found is that you want to pick highly relevant keywords, very, very specific to your product. I would start there. And then work your way out. Now, what we find is that for some products, the specific keywords just unfortunately don't convert very well. I get that question all the time. They're like, I targeted like the really specific keywords for my product. This is where I should convert, and this is where I don't convert. But like I found that like other generic keywords work really well for the product. And so like in those cases, I would say like, hey, if it works for you and it's converting for the product, always go based on data, not based on like, hey, this is quote best practices. But what we found is that best practices are to focus in on those like highly relevant sets of keywords, because that is where we've, again, for most products, find it works best. And then we will be very careful about testing a lot of like the broader generic keywords. And then of course, if we find that they work, you know, all bets are off and we'll go hard on those. But otherwise we will just make sure we're focusing in on the relevant ones. That's like the best thing to do in search is like highly intense keyword research. Where does my product fit in the market? And then making sure that we're targeting in on that. With that, we are pretty much at the top of the hour. If anyone is able to squeak in a final question, I will wait for a couple minutes, but my voice is about shot. So it's probably good to call it here. And then with everything, again, I really appreciate everybody joining in. There has been some amazing questions, some really strategic questions, some really in-depth questions in this session. And so that's been amazing. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And so again, if you don't know who I am, hey, I'm Elizabeth Greene, co-founder of Junglr. So again, we focus in on very specific business focus, highly intricate ad strategies, and make sure that those are tailored for your business, because business-led or founder-led brands have to grow off of their own cash flow. They can't throw $20,000, $15,000, $10,000 at it and see what works. You guys have to make sure that your ads are growing and pulling their own weight, which is where we come in, because we know Amazon ads forward, backwards, and sideways, and we make sure that that is applied to your account. So if you are wondering, I feel like I'm missing something, I have a missing piece, I don't know what it is, I haven't really been able to figure out what strategy works for my products, I feel like I'm just kind of shooting in the dark here, or I'm working with someone, but yeah, every time I ask for something, they say yes, but I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm tired of driving my own ad strategy. I want a different perspective. Highly recommend you jump to our website, which is going to be at junglr.com, and you can sign up, get a free Amazon ad audit. This is going to book a call with myself. We'll go over your ad account. We'll figure out what you want from it, and we'll make sure we're building a customized plan just for you. So anyways, it has been amazing. I will be back here again next week, same time, same place. So you can show up, ask your Amazon ad questions, make sure to improve your ads and get going in the right direction. So appreciate it. I will see you all in the next one.
And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.